And I hear a ding, and out there he is. Want to welcome onto the show the one, the only, Ken Good. Good afternoon, Ken. I got to apologize. My camera keeps on changing, zooming me in and out, not behaving quite well. There we go. There we go. Now I'm back. Now I'm back. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
Yeah,
Hello,
we
Ken.
were we were just having a rant on Letitia James.
I think that would be a pretty easy rant.
Having been a former resident of the state of New York, I was trying to show how Donald Trump and the charges he had against him, there was no one harmed in that one. In the case of Letitia James, the people that were harmed were the citizens of the state of New York. When she signed the mortgage documents in Virginia, stating she was going to be a primary resident in Virginia, she was elected by the citizens of New York to be the attorney general, and the requirement was she also had to be a resident of the state of New York. By saying to the citizens of New York, well, I'm going to still remain your attorney general, but I'm going to live in Virginia, she committed direct harm against the citizens of New York.
Well, she also may have lied because she probably does live
Oh,
in New
yeah.
York. But I mean, so that would be fraud on your application. But I mean, you just kind of like good for the goose, good for the gander. I mean, when you're saying Trump, uh, she prosecuted Trump, but now it's all. I mean, it's like all the arguments are reversed, and now she's kind of making all the arguments Trump made, and it's fun just for that one reason.
Well, I do hope they do find her guilty of all charges. But just watching her, and the thing is, what really gets my blood boiling is that she committed this fraud against the citizens of New York, and yet the citizens of New York are tasked with paying for her
Pay for it.
defense. So they're not only harmed once, but they're harmed twice.
I agree with that. I want them to go through the full legal process and have her to go through a trial so she can experience everything that Trump experienced. And I'm hopeful that, justice is done. And if the allegations are proven, then I hope that a jury agrees with that and finds what the law requires.
I want to see her mugshot. I really do. That's what I want. Plaster that on
Yeah.
the t-shirts.
Well,
Well,
if they
actually,
arrest her, that shouldn't be that long away. I mean, that should be the first thing, just like for Trump. I mean, if they file
yeah,
charges, that'll be the first thing they do. Won't that be fun?
yeah, one of the things that Americans are tired of is no one gets perp walked these days. They commit crimes and they just disappear. You don't hear from them no more. They don't go to jail. They don't go to trial unless you're conservative.
Yeah, I agree with that. We've kind of reached a point in our criminal justice system where it's really your political opponents that are the ones that get the full treatment of the law, and that has to stop. I mean, we just can't. I mean, the criminal justice always has politics in it, but not to this level. I don't believe, and the
No,
level
and
we
I've
have it
never seen
right
it.
now is awful.
No, no, I've not to this level. Never have I seen this. I don't know if you were aware, but I'm retired out of NYPD, and I left in the 90s. And back then, in the 80s and 90s, we had what we called revolving door justice. But
Hmm.
it's never been to the level that I see it today. I do remember at one point I had arrested two individuals. I got back to the precinct, and on the way home, there was a place we used to hang out at the border, just going over the border, that we stop and have a couple of cocktails or whatever. And I was in civvies, and I walk in, I sit down, and I look up at the end of the bar, and there are the two individuals I had arrested just hours before, already sitting there.
Hmm.
But they got there before I even got out of my
Yeah.
uniform, I found out. And that was
Yeah.
happening in the 80s and 90s. But it has gotten to the point where there is a father that has gotten so upset. 24-year-old Caitlin Weaver was T-boned and killed in Aurora, Colorado by, oh my God, an illegal immigrant.
Well, the
And
problem we've got that what you're saying is happening in the early 90s is just so bad right now. I mean, I've made the argument if we're just going to arrest and do this revolving door on misdemeanors, why are we even prosecuting misdemeanors anymore? I mean, we're dismissing almost everything. We're tying the hands of the judges. They can't hold anybody accountable. So why are we even prosecuting misdemeanor crime anymore? It's ridiculous. It has no deterrent effect whatsoever.
Yeah, well, they end up giving the illegal immigrant a probation parole. He was racing. He was high on
Mm-hmm.
drugs and alcohol. She was waiting at a stop sign, and he killed this young girl. And he gets probation parole. And we're seeing time and time again these cities that are back actually sanctuary cities for criminals coming up. You've got Denver, you've got San Francisco, New York. It's crazy.
Well, and one of the arguments I heard recently that I thought was very powerful was the reason why these sanctuary cities have these policies to bring in illegal immigrants is for the census. So, because we
Yeah.
count everybody that lives there in the census, and then your representation in Congress is
Increases.
decided based upon
Mhm.
that. So, we're giving people, like the article is making the point that the Democrats would have 10 fewer seats than they have now if they didn't count illegal aliens. And so that gives them an incentive to encourage those elements to come into their community at the time of the census. And they'll get a heavier, their weight or their votes have a heavier weight as a result. And we've got to take away that incentive.
That's why we
Well,
had open borders to let all these people in.
Well, I
well,
think that was the best explanation for why. But what I don't understand is why have we just ignored the criminal elements? I mean, there's an article from Colorado yesterday saying that a city had so many deportations and their murder rate went down 60%.
true. I mean,
I
that's what
mean,
you're
it's like
finding.
1 + 1 = 2 there.
Yes. I mean, it was where the census had a question on there. Are you an American citizen?
Mm-hmm.
You had to prove that you were an American citizen. You have to have ID and proof when you go into a courtroom, in a federal courtroom. You need now the real ID anywhere within the United States, but it doesn't tell you whether or not you're a citizen or not. Some states are starting to put that there on the license. Matter of fact, my state is now doing that, South Carolina. But it used to be where you had to prove that you
Yeah.
were a resident, a legal resident. Well, that's no longer. We're trying to put it back on the census, but we're getting such a pushback from the left because they know it's going to harm them because they're not going to be able to count the illegals.
Well, I think one of the things that has really driven the left crazy over the last couple of weeks is this brilliant idea that the Trump administration had for allowing people to self-deport and they'll pay them $1,000. I mean, that is driving the left crazy. It's expensive, but it's a lot cheaper than doing the
Yeah,
deportation ourselves. But it also will increase dramatically the numbers of people that will be self-removed, and that's because the impact that will have on the census and the representation numbers. It's driving the left crazy.
and it is. And I think when the census does come around, we're going to see some states like California and others losing numbers because for
Mm-hmm.
the $1,000 you give them, and there's some other thing attached to that also to that. So it was a little bit extra than that. But it costs between 50 to 70,000 for a deportation,
Yeah.
depending upon the circumstance. So you pay 1,000 and a couple dollars more, or you pay
Well,
50 to 70.
plus their cost to do their airline flight and $1,000. I mean, think of all the uh, social benefits that we're saving, and also how much that money goes a long way in probably where they live. I mean, it's a brilliant idea, and that's probably why the left hates it so much.
Yeah, because they're thinking, oh, the illegals, they're going to do, no, they get housing paid for, they get food stamps, they get medical care on Medicaid. These all are services that they absorb from the taxpayers. So what the taxpayer benefits, they're going to find their budgets in their local municipalities all of a sudden maybe have a surplus because we're
Oh
getting rid
yeah.
of the illegal alien
Look
element.
in April. Look in April. We had over a 400 billion surplus for the month. I mean, the federal government had a 400 billion surplus for the month of April. I mean, I've started making the argument. When the Democrats say that Trump is a threat to democracy, is that really what they're saying, or are they really saying he's a threat to the Democrats? Because that looks
Mhm.
like all of the policies he's enacting, the ones they're objecting to, hurt them, not the country.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, the catch and release, though, that is what really drives me crazy. And the case of this young girl here in Aurora, California, that's something that you're working on. And you're doing that. Let me make sure I get this correctly. Okay, good Lord. I had the whole thing in front of me before I was reading it. Of course, my papers are all shuffled over. Here we go. The Professional Bondsmen of Texas.
Yes.
I'm sorry. And you've been working on doing bond reform. What's going on?
Well, in Texas, we're in the middle of a legislative session, and Texas is kind of bucking this bad bail reform that's been enacted across the country, and it's strengthening accountability, strengthening, the criminal justice system. So I think Texas is shining a light for other states. But we've been through this last 5 years where we've just tied the hands of judges and said if they're charged with these crimes, you have to release them. Either, in New York, it'd be a no bond, on California, it'd be zero bail. And these simple release mechanisms are awful. People have high failure to appear rates in California. They use that for all misdemeanors. They have an 80% failure to appear rate across the state. Working in the criminal justice system, if they don't show up for court, their case gets put on hold. We got to wait for them to come back. And you couple that in California with a timeline on how soon, the Speedy Trial Act, if they can run away and be gone long enough, their case will be dismissed because of the Speedy Trial Act. It's just gaming the system to, a level we've never seen before.
Well, I also look at it this way. You are rewarding bad behavior.
Yeah.
You're turning around and saying, yeah, shame on you. You did X, Y, Z, but we're not going to give you bail. We're going to expect you to show up in court. They're turning around. They're giving us the middle finger. They're laughing behind our back and saying, I'm going to go and do whatever I damn well feel like. And
they see that. You say, it's the green light to commit more crime is the way they see it.
Exactly. We have recently a gentleman, I should not even use that term with this individual, that had been arrested for a homicide. He had been arrested prior for another homicide. He was out on the street. He does finally get arrested on the second homicide. And the cop that is arresting him and booking him, he's saying, I'm going to come back and I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill you. And he said that multiple times to a police officer. Well, thankfully, because I live in the area I have, and I have the DA that we have and the sheriff we have, they said, okay, you made threats against a police officer. We're adding a couple extra federal charges to you. You're not going anywhere. But this is what the country needs to wake up and see this.
But isn't it sad when our local state officials won't do their job, so we have to rely upon the federal government to come in and file federal charges to do the job that the state or county officials refuse to do? That's really sad.
Annie,
yeah.
Wasn't it New York where a mob beat up the cops and the cops were afraid to do anything because they didn't want to go to jail or be accused of police brutality?
Yeah, it was two NYPD officers that were beaten by illegal aliens. Yeah.
I think we're coming out of that period. I think one of the great things from Trump's election is we've ended this period where we can't talk about things. I did a podcast talking before the election, talking about how, in California, the legal marijuana business was going bankrupt and it was being taken over by the cartels. And I couldn't even post a story on Facebook about it. They just immediately deleted it. And I thought, well, maybe I've been conned. Maybe this isn't a real story. And then you started hearing Trump talk about it during the election. And then since he won, all of those guardrails suppressing the news have seemed to go away. And suddenly I was able to post a story about it, do a podcast about it, and there wasn't any suppression. I think one of the reasons why we're having such a bad backlash right now is because we've had such suppression of this news. And so the backlash that we would have had a year or 2 years ago is just now coming out, and it's going to be a lot worse because they were hiding the truth.
Yeah, I actually agree, because I had been, they called ghosted on X and a couple of other places. And people that would follow me say, we can't find you. Your posts are being hidden. I had been taken off of Facebook and YouTube multiple times. And so the heck with them, at this point. But
Yeah.
I still do post to them, but people don't really see them because they're still shadow banning you. And I think now we're starting, as we take over the media, and we become the news outlets that everyone else is starting to turn to. They're turning off CNN, MSNBC, and everything else, and
Hmm.
they're turning to alternative avenues like this show. And I've been doing this for 15 years. And
Wow.
finally, people are saying, hey, yeah. Hey, yeah. And you have been doing a fantastic job also getting the word out because you've written a bunch of different a post on the blog spot on PBTX. Uh, I'll get the name of your organization right.
Yes, we have a blog on pbtx.com where we post important stories on the criminal justice world, and I've written numerous articles published in many different publications about criminal justice reform, what's good, what's bad, what works, what doesn't.
Because you have one, The Untold Story, selling out public safety, one district attorney at a time. And
Yeah.
I do remember at times that you would go in and you'd put up your arrest sheet, or we called it the criminal complaint, and you'd list all the crimes that you were booking the
Hmm.
individual for. And by the time you get to the ADA over there, they're saying, and also you saw the red pen come out, course off this one,
Yeah.
and you may have 7 or 8 different charges, and we're lucky if we see 2 left.
Well, we've had this period where Soros has been picking off our DAs one at a time, and he's gotten so well organized. I mean, he has a group that they go out and recruit soft on crime DAs, and they give them a bunch of money. They run them in Democrat strongholds where all they got to do is beat the Democrat in the primary, and they have a lot more money than them. Then they have another group that invites them to seminars that says, okay, quid pro quo, here's your soft on crime policies that you're going to adopt. And then they have another group, which is pseudoscience group, that does reports saying adopting these policies will not increase crime. And then they have this last group that does press releases for them, tells them how to sell these policies to the public. And they've been disastrous. They've increased crime. They've done exactly what you and I would know, what we would know they would have an impact on crime. And that's one of the reasons why, he had a large number of DAs that had his support that were defeated because, I mean, these are activists making arguments. They're not going to admit when they're wrong. A true politician who wants to prove things, when something doesn't work for 2 or 3 or 4 years, they're going to say, okay, that didn't work. Let's try something else. These groups don't do that. And the problem we have is I think the Democrats have outsourced their criminal justice policy to these advocacy groups. And these advocacy groups are not going to admit they're wrong. And so they won't give up.
No, it's a multi-billion-dollar business. That's what it is. As long as the money is coming in, they're going to have this mill that they put this pablum out there. Oh, that they're poor. They're underdeserved. No one understands them. Oh, they're this racial thing and that thing is keeping them down. You evil white people, type of thing. And how dare you? You don't understand them, and you
Well,
give them
really
this
what
soft sell.
their policies are we have to put up with more crime because we know how to fight crime. We know how to increase public safety. And everything they're doing is doing the opposite. And really what they're saying is we should put up with more crime. And if they said that and put it up for a vote, it would fail. So they have to lie and they have to misrepresent. And then they have to have these pseudoscience reports to support them. But in the end, it's still the same. They want us to accept more crime. And we're not going to do it. I mean, what that will force is vigilante justice. And we've seen that in some areas in the country.
We have.
Ken,
Yes, sir.
because of the lack of leadership on the left, I think the strategy is just to try to outweight Trump these 4 years with hopes that they will get back in power, starting with the midterms in next year. What's your thoughts on that?
I've read an article from someone, a blog I go to that I respect, and I agree with you. There's very little news that I do, so I go to the same places for news where I respect them. And one of those has already come out and said there's no way that the Republicans keep the House. And I think that we don't know the answer to that yet. I do think that that's exactly what the Democrats want, and if they get it, they may freaking impeach Trump one more time. But I don't. I think the Democrats and maybe even this commentator have misjudged Trump. He has come back so prepared for this term. He is so ready. And can you imagine the number? He's going to roll out every week a new trade deal when he starts rolling them out. And that's going to happen all the way to the midterm elections. And
And
so
probably
when he's,
beyond.
oh, and beyond. But I'm telling you, I think that, and that's what's scaring the Democrats right now, because he's going to get on a roll. And because what he's doing is good for the country, and he's guided by what he thinks is best for the country, not what's best for his family's bank account. And so I think you're going to see him get on a roll, and it may be, I'm hopeful that the normal trend we see is not what we're going to experience with Trump.
Because he's right now in the Middle East, and every single day, not just one or two, but he's rolling out one after another of these new deals, and trillions of dollars are now rolling back into the United States, and stuff that will be based here in the United States, not in a foreign country.
Well, even the Democrats' media sources are giving him credit, and he's even commented at a press conference saying, "Well, even the Democrats or the media's, that don't like me are saying nice things about what we're doing on this trip." So, I think, I mean, Trump has come out with gangbusters. He came out with a plan, and I will tell you this: if Trump had won re-election 4 years ago, he would have had a Democrat House, maybe even a Democrat Senate, probably would have been impeached another time. He would have not gotten anything done. He would have been a mediocre president. But they pissed him off. And Trump planned for 4 years for this. And he's come in loaded for bear. And I think the best argument I've seen on Trump is Trump in his first term tried to play the part of a politician, and he wasn't a politician. But Trump for his second term is.
Oh, just lost Ken. We just lost Ken.
Trump is a patriot.
It's funny because I was up at my state GOP convention just recently, and I ran into, he used to be my congressman until they redistricted, Joe Wilson, and he was really optimistic. We got Ken back. Let's bring him back on so he can finish. Here we go.
I apologize, but what the comment was that Trump's first term he was playing the part of a politician, but for his second term he's taking over a bankrupt company, which he knows how to do very well.
Yeah, I think he took all that time and planned this out.
Mm-hmm.
He was looking so far, he's looking at what happened to him and how it happened, and then saying, I'm not going to let this happen again. And I think he's doing the right thing, but he's coming in like gangbusters, and no one knows what to expect next. And I think that's the fun part.
Like
That's
a chess master.
Part is.
He's a chess master.
Yes, and I think that we've also, I mean, maybe I'm too optimistic, but I think he's a lot smarter than we even thought he was. And like you said, chess master, absolutely.
Bobby Fischer all the way.
Absolutely, I agree with that. And I think we're going to be giving, someone said this after the election, we're going to be watching movies about Trump and his first term and his second term and his re-election for the rest of our lives. And I agree with that. I mean, I don't know any other Republican alive today who could have survived what he survived and got reelected. I mean, I don't know anybody.
Well, before we let you go, just for the last few minutes of your interview with us, you wrote an article that I found very, very interesting, and it kind of like ties into a recent Supreme Court ruling that came out. You wrote about a federal kidnapping case, U.S. v. Lozer, where he was a licensed recovery agent, and he crossed over state lines, got the person they were after, brought them back, and then he was charged with federal kidnapping. What do you see happening for guys like this?
Well, I think it's a warning call, and it's when politics overtakes even recovery. So, I mean, here's a guy who had a valid warrant, crossed state lines, and got the person and was taking them back to his home state, to the court where they missed court. And, because of the politics in place at the time, the federal government filed federal kidnapping charges. I think that case turned on the fact that he was not a licensed recovery agent in the other state. And so I think that's a warning for recovery agents. That state did not. It declined to prosecute him. So I think that should be left with the state. And we shouldn't be, I mean, I don't think he should be held to be taking somebody unlawful across state lines when he has a valid warrant for their arrest. And so I think that is an example of how politics has taken over the criminal justice system in such a negative way. When suddenly we're putting the rights of the criminal defendant over everything else.
Well, what the Supreme Court just came up with, this was an instance of a traffic stop. So there was an exchange going on, trying to get the guy to give him a license, ask the guy to step out of the car. And instead of stepping out of the car while the officer was attached to the car, took off. And the officer fired his weapon and the defendant died. And the original case found in favor of the law enforcement officer defending himself in the line of duty. The Supreme Court said, no, wait a minute. You got to look at all the steps that happened prior to that to make him justify why he did what he did. And I think that's going to end up backfiring on a lot of law enforcement officers.
Yeah, I've looked at this. I mean, I've argued this issue before from the perspective of qualified immunity. You know, we have this big push to get rid of qualified immunity for law enforcement. And I'm like, you know, the reason why they're pushing that is once you get rid of qualified immunity, you will not have anyone who will be a police officer, because then anytime somebody wants to second guess them, or they just have money, or some advocacy group will come in and fund an attorney to make your life miserable over any decision you make that could have gone either way. And nobody will work for cities. It's another way to create chaos. And I think a lot of these policies, that's what their goal is, to create chaos.
Well, that kind of like reminds me, I think it was Portland, Oregon, that was trying to recruit illegal aliens to become law enforcement officers. Was it Portland?
I don't remember, but I do remember the story. But that's ridiculous. You know, that just blurs the line of what a citizen is. And that's the reason why they bring these people in and they increase their numbers in Congress. But then their ultimate goal is, you know, the Democrats are having difficulty winning elections, and they've been winning by making their electorate mad, so they come out in larger numbers to vote. But we've done that so many that now they can't just make them mad anymore. And so I think you're seeing that, you know, let's bring in some more people that maybe potentially one day can be additional voters for us. And I think that's one of the other arguments we hear. You know, I think when you look at immigration, you look at what's going on there. I mean, we couldn't enforce immigration. We couldn't secure our borders without a new law. Suddenly we got a new president and we have secure borders within 120 days. And then I think the same thing on criminal justice reform. We know how to fight crime. We're actually not fighting crime right now. We're creating more crime. And if we would just recognize that and empower law enforcement, we would see crime go down dramatically, because we know what to do. It's just that our politicians are preventing that right at the moment.
You know, it goes to the old thing that I learned, that, you know, if you see someone committing something on your beat, whether it's an open container or some small infraction, you go after that. Yeah. Because the guy down the street who's looking to see whether or not he can set up shop on the corner is looking to see if you're paying attention and are you going to do something about it. So they make say it's like, I don't know, community policing crime or whatever. They give it all different names. But if you let the small little thing go, the guy behind coming in is going to say, well, if they're going to let that go, let me test them and see whether or not they're going to pay attention. And it snowballs and it snowballs.
Absolutely. And the way I describe it is, you've got a city within a city. You've got a city of criminals who are committing a large percentage of all the crime in an urban area. But then on the gray area between the two cities, you've got a whole bunch of people that are watching. And they're watching, are they going to live in the crime city, or are they going to live in the law and order city? And they're making their decision based on what's happening to the criminals. And when the criminals are held accountable, they're like, ooh, we're going to follow the law. And when criminals are not held accountable, Well, they're going to join the crime city because there's no accountability. And in a lot of our urban areas right now, crime is increasing because the people in the gray areas are going, there's no accountability. Nothing will happen to me.
Well, before I let you go, I just want one last thing. Your thoughts on how Texas has said no to that 492-acre caliphate.
Oh, I know. I mean, I just saw an article where they were talking about they were doing all these reports and they were doing all these uh, uh, investigations of that. I'm not opposed to an area being developed based on common uh, commonness in the people that live there. I think what we're seeing though is we're seeing that this is uh, not with good intent, and it's intended to do. Or I think the investigations are appropriate, and I think that they're finding out a lot of bad stuff, and that's the reason why it got stopped.
Because as I was reading the articles about it, as I understood it, they were going to impose Sharia law within
Yeah,
that community, 492 acres of Sharia law. Oh, you're not a Muslim, but you can come here and live with us. Yeah,
yeah.
but if you're living under Sharia law means that if you're living in their community, you must pay the jizya to them. So in other words, you're
Yeah,
not only paying your state, local, and federal taxes, you're paying a tax to the caliphate. And so
yeah.
it was not make, and how dare you go out without a head dress, a burqa, or a
Well, and why
hijab?
would they come to Texas to do that? I mean, they can do that in California easily. Why do they think they can get away with it in Texas?
I think it was a test, honestly. I
Oh,
think they
that's
were going to
probably a
see,
good point. That's probably a
I
good
think it was
point.
honestly a test to see what the reaction would be of the American people.
Well, one of the next scandal we need to tackle is homelessness, and not the fact that people are homeless, but all this money that's being thrown at it in California, and that is not addressing the issue because of all of the uh, fraud, all the corruption that's there. And so, I mean, again, there's so many similarities between crime, immigration, and now homelessness. And I think the common element there is all these kickbacks. I mean, I've
Yeah.
said before on the issue of crime, what would our politicians be doing that they're not doing now in our urban cities if they were getting kickbacks to allow crime to increase? So in our urban areas, when they're doing soft on crime policies where they're dismissing cases, what would they be doing differently if they were being paid off? I would argue nothing.
Mm. Well, Ken, it has been a pleasure having you with you. Where can people find you?
People can find our organization at pbtx.com, the Professional Bondsmen of Texas, and we have a blog where we post important criminal justice stories. But we also have our own podcast. There's a link to it on our menu, but you can also go to the Bell Post. Bail is in BAIL. Thebellpost.com. All we do is talk about criminal justice issues. We want to educate legislators and the public on what works and what doesn't work.
Well, God bless you, Ken. We welcome you back anytime.
Well, thank you so much for having me. Y'all have a
Take
nice weekend.
care. All
You
right,
too.
Bye.
Ken.
Take care.
Bye.